So what could be wrong with the whole New Age propaganda community? Because if we recognize it as that being its own thing, its own storage unit of an energy base of how an information creates its own field to be used and inhabited in many different ways, and it propping itself to be a culture norm, that we get lost and dissolved into that field of energy, which it's already doing its own workings. All of these things are their own workings of their own energy hives. That, and for me to say that neutrally, that's a different touch of grace. But like that doesn't necessarily make me exempt from my own shadow work. It does, like, because like I'm not exempt from that shadow work because I'm still working through, like, doing the practice of following up why things are the way they are. And that question itself, you could have a reflective pause on that. And I got the white stripe going on today. So within that white stripe, do what thou will with that white stripe. But following up and just observing and assessing the New Age community, it's not entirely true, because ultimately it's like, it's just a certain system of information and how things are being created from it, different new narratives, and to ultimately see what is true for you, even behind and ahead of the New Age spirituality community teachings. Behind and ahead of that is what's ultimately, like, what is true for you. And when you ask what is true for you, you could then take a side step or a step back on a neutral level, neutral leap or whatever. And you actually get to begin to, like, sift out of the false tone and the lower octave of the New Age community, because what they're painting ultimately, and how they're saying to go towards that in a flawed, fragmented way, that's far from the truth. The real spirituality, it has nothing to do for how they're visualizing it and how everything's all good, and it's not, and it's not to say it's all bad either. They're both with each other, and they're both lessons from God and the devil and their shit, and wherever that or ultimately originates. So I just kind of like, we're going that field of that system of information of the New Age community, like that particularly, that system of information, it's we're also like, it could be called part of the unconscious or subconscious. And it's part of the unconscious because it's a field of energy that's there, lingering in the background, just like a propaganda narrative machine, and how they're saying a certain way of life is, when it's, in the end, it's just a bunch of collective biases put together. And within all of those biases put together, they're kind of telling, they're not necessarily like, saying what is your truth, like what is, like, speak your truth, in a different like page of life or whatever, like speak your own truth. And ultimately, like, we have to find what is true for us, and once we, like, particularly ask that question, what is true for us, we could then sift out of, like, how it has its own stemming, how the New Age community has its own stemming of just a new culture of it, like directly, like the psychology that's inhabiting the people, like, that's in between, like the style culture and the physical, the body and stuff, in between is, like, respectively, the psychology. And within that psychology, it's being engineered in a false narrative and false mechanics way of how saying this is what spirituality is, when it's not that. Spirituality is on a direct level. It's just basically truth, because you can't have spirituality without some type of truth. So, and obviously it could be many things. That's why, what is it for, like, how is it true to you, because ultimately, on a low-key level, you're making what's true for you that could be false, and you're making what's false for you which could be true in just a different way. But it doesn't have to be directly that. But one of the most, like, appreciative things I favor is just like how the truth could come to us and be direct with us, and where we could work with that in like a natural way, because obviously I'm not like, it's funny because like there's different, like, perspectives on what the not self is, but it just seems that like a different perspective of a not self, it was like it was its own isolated like entity from like how like a certain system is telling you not to be forceful or pushy, and yet, like, sometimes, like, these certain organizations could be just that, but like that's a subtle key right there, because the basis of like some type of like trusted relationship is like to like not like overextend your offer, but like on a spiritual level. And to not overextend your offer on a spiritual level, it means like you have to have your client ready when they're ready. You have to have them ready to like partner up with you and be clear on like what is the build. Because I saw this post from this guy and he said something about like it just popped up on my feed, and it said something like, because obviously, like, these pillars of like life, they've already been a different collective thing, different collective outlets. It's not subject to just one single unit of like consciousness, many infinite different consciousnesses from source mother and source father or whatever, yada yada yada. From that, we're all using like the same shit, particularly the human. But how we're using the human after its psychology and after its after its participation with society, it comes to lay to rest and build these subtle habit patterns that are actually like creating and mutating us for what we are to be right now, and it's not, I'm not trying to be a spooky thing. We like, mutation has been going on for like millions of years, etc. But like how it's being done, we like there's just like this, like there's this unique competition going on, and within that unique competition, it's been going, this particular unique competition, because obviously what the original war is, that could have different perspectives from what like respectively dimension you're ultimately perceiving that from, and like on the Underground podcast, I explain like what the original war was on like a different descriptive, informative like message audio file. And from that message audio file, there's more details packed, of course, in the such thereof, therein, that is thou already within you, therein inserted in a standardality like way. Because, as you're growing your knowledge, you're going to find out different things. And when you find out different things, it's like how you could look at it in such a better way in so many different ways. And it's ultimately like, how, like, what forces of energy are ultimately like allowing you to create a sovereign truth and a natural truth, like, just besides it all. Because in the end, like, can your advancement of your technology debunk everything or not, with its accurate, legitimate definition thereof, what everything is? Because if you were to debunk everything, so that's the thing. It's like, if we're trying to debunk everything, then wouldn't like someone is just gonna like say, like, someone's just gonna suggest that, and the suggestions, by some inevitable nature, someone else will follow up on that. That's the nature of like the higher natural chaos of universe. Someone's following up on an inquiry or a query, suggestion, And from that, it's already being done elsewhere. That's why the whole grasping, that's coming to a transition and a dissolve too, because life is telling us like to kind of like, life itself is telling us to like, you know, like to kind of chill out and even surrender. Because obviously the underground podcasts that I kind of jump back and forth from them, and for some reason they're more lengthier because there's lesser pressure of like how I, you know, how like the videos, you know, a certain quality is expected within the videos of just like the clearness of it. But for some reason it's more compact, and it's more like, you know, so for some reason on the videos I'm like trying to be more like I feel like I'm on like some type of time setting or whatever, or I'm on some time countdown. But like that's not necessarily true. And as for the underground podcast, I'm kind of more mellow, and I kind of just like let it kind of like do its thing, you know. But the interchange of like, you know, how someone gets access to like everything, that's everything, because ultimately a higher nature is like allowing this shit for a time being. But the higher nature, it's so extreme within its polarities, because it's self-proven that there is an order, because there's order right now. So if there's order right now, and things naturally by different evidences they get magnified, by different natural provings there's more magnitude in it, then there has to be a higher magnified order. And there is a higher magnified order because we're receiving from that, and that's what we're influenced by, and that's what we're ultimately expressing as well, because that's the self-evident field of that magnified field. We're feeling it right now, to how our intelligence could capture that, you know, the higher order. So I bring the higher order that up, because it's just self-proven that there's a higher nature that is like kind of like moving things around, because we are micro reflections to do just that, you know. Because like if someone acts out of pocket, and it's not necessary, it's pivoting in and out of like the legal law system as it modernly balancedly updates. It's pivoting in and out of that, because on one note, it's without the mind, it just does, you know. There's a secret level without the mind, and things are just doing like, and that's what God is doing. He's doing like the original infinity respectively. And like before that, it's simultaneously before and after that, what's created is time itself. And when time itself is created, we have this idea and this tradition and this lineage of what the law and the legality systems could be. And as we're kind of upholding and proposing such that therefore of a system of proposal is such a nature of demonstration in this display board upon this, you know, this entertained grandiose audience juror arena, they're moving with the idea of how it's being updated as well. What, regardless of their level of intelligence, it's still a thing that's like it's an ongoing thing, you know. So it's up to us on how we forget that nature is always judging us without any of the biases, because there's a part of nature and life that is without the mind, and the part and of life that is without the mind, it is the isness of how things have a track record of time itself, with some type of no time, obviously. But that's the thing, we're in and out of that like no time, you know. But how we get into time, it's per some like different, it's per some different system of nature though, because there is order within the chaos. There's like, you could go into a dream and like go into chaos, and something from the order gets you back, you know. So it's like it's so intricate, and it's so like iridescently fluorescently like spider web tangly like, and it's spider webby like. So ultimately, like, we have to recognize what the new age thing, the new age spirituality community has like false energies kind of sometimes, because It's not telling us the whole truth for one, and it's not telling you particularly directly how to make up your own truth within the self, absolute truths that already, like, they're already their own thing, but that's for you to, like, kind of go with nature with. And whether you like wrestling, whether you like fighting, whether you like striking, fencing, dancing, snowboarding, whether you like just doing your job and tackling on your job, there you're always going to be like with that original nature principle that governs everything, including you, on a neutral level. And I just think the New Age community, it's a field that's not necessarily like, it's like simultaneously, it's not necessarily an entity. It's just its own system of energy. But somehow, like, on a different level, that could be like, but there is entities within it, because that's the thing that, like, they're moving through. And that's not good. That's not bad. I'm just saying, like, there's also many different fields other than that just one, and it's the field of where you get to make your own truth most particularly. And as I hopefully gear towards being more careful with everything that I do, the most particular thing that there is like, what are the things outside from the New Age community that want you to make up your own truth? So it's like debunking everything. Like, does it, like, astrology is simultaneously not true and true, because what's true for you is what you're making your truth out of, general truth, and then general, like, not truth, and that's your subjective truth. And within that subjective truth, there's still unknown objective truths that we're kind of like buffering ourselves on. And that's not good. That's not bad. But we're just doing a little buffer dance, That's all that's going on. Like, literally, life is just like some type of buffer dance, like beyond the digital code too. And like the underground shit neutrally will do what everything's going to do what it does anyways. Everything's going to do its thing, The sun's still going to keep rising. The sky's still going to be skying. And the matrix in its extreme duality is still going to be the matrix, and it's not good or bad. It's something we have to realize. To how do we ground in our peace? How do we ground in our tranquility? How do we ground in our fairness or whatever? But astrology, it's like, so like it's so someone could say it's not true, and in some way it probably isn't true, for a time being, until material creation and time gets introduced. Then that is like the neutral, like, network of how a different, esoteric vantage point is processing that, but it doesn't have to be true, or it could be true, but it's like what we're making it to be true, because there's a sextile between Saturn and Pluto. So that's like the business of death, like, for however that got aligned in this time and place. Saturn sextile Pluto, the opportunity of death. So that doesn't have to be a thing for you, but just because it's not a thing for you, that doesn't mean it's like still going on. And I'm not trying to push anything, like I'm not trying to, that's the ironic thing, like human design is trying to say that, for me at least, is like not to be so pushy, and to relax, obviously. So I'm not exempt from, like, having the shock of hearing a new revelation of something and seeing how it's going to change my life. I'm still like going through that motion too. But like, if I were to say something, that's not me mastering the practice of what I'm saying. Far from it. The opposite of it. Because like if I were to say like some type of principle, like I'm practicing, for example, letting everything be just as it's gonna be, you know, I'm practicing that, but that doesn't mean I'm like I mastered that. And within that, my human is going through the ropes of different networks of truth and not truth. So it, got the stripe. Got the stripe. Yeah, but if I were to conclude it with like, you know, every time I like zone in and out of astrology, I always kind of conclude it, well, like, why are they in that position to begin with? And why is it that they ended up in that position? So that's a key to unlocking astrology too, because it's like but that's like it's not to be like forced either, but just because the seed's there, that doesn't mean like, because mutation is like it's ever it's ever like it's ever like multi within you, like already though. Because what's ultimately influencing us, how we change, that is our that's our, like, you know, that's what we are. It's just transforming the quote unquote psyop, end quote, but it's not necessarily a psyop. It's just how something got turned into a psyop based on a different natural order. So I say transforming a psyop because new age spirituality is thriving off of like demonic business principles, literally. And if I don't say it, then it's not gonna, like, the truth won't be, the truth in itself, its mission won't be successful. And if the truth's mission is not successful, then your truth, ironically, the most direct irony that there will ever be in your life, will not be successful, because your truth thrives on everybody else's truth. And the truth that I'm particularly talking about is the truth of purity and the truth of deep balance. And without deep purity and deep balance, that's the ironic thing. Somehow we cast stones at that shit, but that's the thing that like makes us everything grow, you know? Because we need some type of truth light to see like anything that we are, you know, anything that is. And the truth that is, we're reflecting that truth that is. And the truth that is somehow hides and manages and does all this shit with the purity based on a different universal system. Because how could you like just sit back and sometimes in the truth community and not be like, how did this all happen, you know? Like how did this all, like, because obviously there's different stages to know it. It has nothing to do with comparison. It's just like literally, like, the predecessors have been trying to like flag us down, like what are the state of things as they are. You know, they've been trying to, like, you know, all the predecessors, all the benevolent balanced ancestors, they've been trying to, like, you know, they've been trying to wave at you. And, you know, the propaganda society machines, you know, new age spirituality being like, you know, a sub pocket of that, it's been developing and gassing up the psychology to be numb to, you know, what's worth fighting for. And I think what's worth fighting for with my like spiritual foundation is just like just some type of fucking liberty. you know, like whatever that liberty is, because I'm not trying to like force my belief on anybody, because I've just, that's how I shifted, you know. Maybe in like the, but like that's the thing, we all have, we could all gracefully change, because even if that was you, you could see like a bigger way that's being opportunityized for you, and as it's being opportunityized, you could like, you could be graceful within, you know, life telling us to like, life telling us many different things, right? And this is like, this is a rough cut, obviously, and I've probably done like a handful of these rough cuts. These type of ones, like the ones that range from 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. I'm not going to say the number because I'm not. But we can't necessarily compare ourselves. I mean, we can, but it's like it's an impaling comparison for us to compare ourselves to like all that is. And the all that is, it's so like, it's so advanced that it's hiding itself. It's the enlightenment behind enlightenment. It's the enlightenment behind, you know, this digital tech hypey shit. It's the enlightenment behind which gives birth, and how capitalism gets polarized, and duality comes from capitalism, because capitalism isn't necessarily bad. It's just a trade and a walk of a path of how, you know, how we're making meaning of the generation of money, or the generation of, you know, energy, and how we could like, you know, kind of like build that energy to like, you know, apparently put it in a system where there's some type of monopolistic system where you start from like the, you know, the ground up, obviously, and from you starting the ground up, there's like, we're looking at where we're at in like Boo Mandala, because that's what it is, you know. That's, and for me to like just clarify that off the bat is, it's insane. Because how do you expect to do real estate when you don't know what the like, what the like what the original land is in itself? And like, it's not to be all woo woo with like, this is, it's not necessarily like spiritual, it's just seeing like what energy is ultimately like sustaining that field, you know. And as it's doing that, it's we don't have to compare ourselves with that, because we're a guest to its ride. We're just a guest to the ride. A guest. But all these different things, they're all like minutely contributing to some type of mutation as well, though. That's the thing I wanted to also like, you know, all the knowledge that's hopefully being used, utilized, have action with, the knowledge with action needs, you know, awareness. It really does, because you could have all the action you want, you could have all the knowledge you want, but if you don't have the awareness with the knowledge and with the action, then ultimately you're not going to have like that lamp post for where you were left off, or like, because this is like, this is just, we have to literally see the oneness in the game. Because if we don't see the oneness in the game, then we're minusing out purity, we're minusing out liberty, we're minusing out the fine line that upholds, and it's a secret, that's the secret level we're trying to obtain, the secret balance. that actually where we get to foster and ground in whatever we're calling liberty and purity. And the liberty and purity, it's not net, it's like on a neutral level. That's been going on for like ever though, you know. That's been like, that's the thing, like I understand what's going on. It's been going on forever though, and that's like, that's the game of it, you know. And everything's all temporal, so we don't have to worry about like anything that we're not particularly in. The first step to this, you know, spiritual shit is just like worry about yourself, you know. And that's how to cure envy too. Like how do you cure envy, like enviousness, envious nature? It's just, I would just like, you know, picture yourself already being what you want to be and work at going towards that, and use other people as an inspiration. And when you find yourself comparing yourself to others, where they're helping you lift and build you up rather than you seeing it as a threat. But yet again, that's a practice. And as you cure envy, you don't have to let it like skew your awareness. You don't have to let it skew your knowledge, and you don't have to let it skew your actions or your emotions. So that's why like envy could like get out of control. These 7 deadly sins, they could run rampant, and they collectively are being utilized by a little bit of everything as they're going in the different fields of information systems. And the different fields of information systems, there are things that are outside the New Age spirituality community norm. And as we're getting out of that particular one, behind that and after that is the original absolute truth that is just honeydewed and spored out and like kind of poured out, and honey, you know, sprinkled out, and like jizzled out, frizzled out, drizzled out. It's drizzled out onto what the new field is, what the new us is. We're receiving some type of, the truth is like hidden within the duality. And as the truth is hidden within the duality, we have to see like how there's just an information system that's not necessarily like wanting us to make our own truth, and only wants us to have half the truth. That was the basic point. It only wants us to have half the truth. And from that fragmented, faulty starting point, then that's how things grow. And that's the system we're coming out of, that we're all in. Doesn't matter even if you're rich or well off or whatever you got. We're all in that system that's catering to you in a certain way as it's been, and it's transforming naturally and casually. And I'm not trying to throw stones at anybody at this point, because it's a higher, like, it's a higher balance. So that's like the whole, like, you know, that's what Mars is like, you know, combating with the most. He's experiencing all of these 7 deadly emotions. He took it upon himself, and as he's doing that, he's using those extreme emotions to move through everything, like on the physical plane. And as he's moving through everything, he's only doing so in a certain like district. But as he's using the emotions uniquely to him, to what district of energy he's going through. Because there's these other neutral fields that are not necessarily like any of the deities at all. They're just themes of life, such as the information systems. And the information systems, it has a fragmented grounding within the system of governance that you guys are voting for, based on, you know, what you choose to acknowledge as you know, what are fair rights, you know. But like on a deep esoteric level, I'm not just saying fair rights just to say fair rights. I'm not just trying to poop out fairy dust or sprinkle or fart out fairy dust. No, I'm like, this has been an ongoing thing. And as I bring it up with more context and enriching details, it is up for receiver to decide what thou shalt do with thou uncovered, unsheathed, revelationarized knowledge, revelatory knowledge. So like to debunk everything, it doesn't, what's true doesn't have to be true for you right now. And that's okay. And what isn't true in some weird surface level matrix way, what isn't true, you could be making that a truth. And as you're making that a truth, that's your like surface level truth of influence. And we're spreading all of this, like, you know, this surface level superficial truth upon everybody. And for some reason, we're conforming and fighting for that niche psychological detail. We're fighting for a niche psychological detail of superficial truth. And that's how advanced the matrix is. And like, you know, God allows that though, you know, because why would it be? Why would any of this be? But debunking everything so you can see what your truth is and how astrology could be true, and it doesn't have to be true, and it could be true on a surprisingly like lower octave realm in regards to the universe, but it could still have some like, you know, significance for like this human experiment or whatever. So it's like it's a fractioned off objective truth that has different functionings. That's what astrology could be in 1/10. It's a fractioned off objective truth that is actually low key more relevant to us than we think, and how it got positioned and how it did. That could mean different things, and as it's meaning different things, it's we're kind of pivoting in and out of its influence based on how we like are released from its grasps for a time being, because we're going in and out of every other challenge. We're going in and out of like so we could be released from the grasps of like, you know, their challenge, not good or bad, for a time being, but then we always come back to it, like depending on like, you know, where our energy is calling for us to be, because nothing is good or bad. It's just we're just participating in the matrix, and we're like, we chose to be a human based on what we like followed up on from our, like, you know, our lineage of desires. And our lineage of desires, we're still doing that. So if we're still following up on our lineage of if we're still following up on our lineage of desires, then wouldn't you think that's like a significant like metaphysical pattern for us to make us what we will be, you know? Even though it's kind of like fixed and rigid and not fixed and rigid, like how like the minute choices that we get to make, there's just, it just seems like there's like it's a technical road to expansion. So thank you guys. Thank you. I'm gonna go underground.